Hello Hollows and welcome to the second episode of Fundamental Flaws. This is the series where you guys tell me a design flaw you feel is present in any FromSoftware Souls-like, and I will discuss what I think maybe could have been done better. I'll be selecting 2 or 3 flaws for each video. Before we begin though, make sure you comment your own flaw down in the comments below if you'd like to be featured in a future episode of Fundamental Flaws 2 or 4 weeks from now. Currently, I'm trying to stick with Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, Dark Souls 2 and Bloodborne now, but if you do have any issues with Dark Souls 3, Sekiro or Elden Ring, then still leave them down below and I'll consider them if they make for a good enough talking point. Just before we get into the video, I'd like to say I've now got channel memberships available on my channel. I know I'm only a really small channel, but if you do want to potentially help support me, try and make this channel more than just a small little hobby that I do for fun, then please feel free to support in any way you possibly can, and you'll get benefits like a shout out at the end of videos and some exclusive members only content, and potentially you can also end up playing the game with me if you want to, and we can chat and things and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to help support me, then I would appreciate it in any potential way that you can. Anyway, let's get on with the video. Now we're starting off with Bloodborne then for today's first flaw, sent in by Devious Chimp. They say, Bloodborne, blood vials and grinding. Running out of vials and being forced to grind for an arbitrary amount of time was the worst feeling after nearly defeating a boss. I feel like an interesting alternative to finite blood vials is having a single reusable blood vial that can be refilled by damaging enemies when not already refilling, although at a slower rate than the normal refill. This further encourages the aggressive playstyle of Bloodborne and completely removes the reliance on monotonous grinding. Now, I definitely agree with Devious Chimp here in that grinding for blood vials is probably the worst aspect of Bloodborne. However, I also feel like this can actually be the case for Quicksilver bullets as well sometimes. I've just started recording my Let's Play of Bloodborne, which will be coming out soon on the channel. What I've been trying to do is always spend any spare souls that I have after leveling up or upgrading my weapon on blood vials, just because I've heard that this can be a big issue, and I'm also sort of used to having to buy limited healing items after my Dark Souls 2 playthrough. This is one of those things though that I honestly just don't understand. The healing system has always changed throughout the Souls franchise and has seen changes in every single entry in some way. However, it's something that in my opinion was perfected with the original Dark Souls. The Estus flask we saw there was absolutely perfect by allowing you just 5 uses of the flask. However, if an area was too hard, then the player had the choice to kindle at a bonfire to increase the amount of healing charges that they could get with this flask. It's a perfect example of player control difficulty, and the humanity resource was also perfectly designed in my opinion. For newcomers, humanity is a vital resource, as it's what allows you to summon in other players to your world to allow for co-op, but you also want to use that humanity at bonfires to kindle them. At this point in your experience, humanity seems like a rare resource and is really important to you. But it's a brilliant feeling though when you become a veteran player and suddenly you can use humanity as a resource to help you farm for items by using it to increase your item discovery, or as a healing resource on its own in a panic because you got quite a bit of humanity because now you're generally better at the game. I feel like this system was perfected in Dark Souls 1 and then it was modified needlessly in Dark Souls 2 with the introduction of life gems and then again in Bloodborne, but here for me, I think Bloodborne, in my opinion, would be an infinitely better experience if it had an Estus flask system, but maybe the charges were more limited to accommodate for the regen system that Bloodborne has. And that's kind of what Devious Chimp is getting at here, I think, when he mentions a single reusable blood vial. However, I think a single one would probably be a little bit too restrictive for new players, and it would also cause issues in boss fights. So I think maybe having 3 blood vials, but then perhaps they can be refilled if you defeat so many enemies or something like this. But even then, I honestly just think 5 blood vials on top of the regen system would probably be fine in my opinion anyway, because in Bloodborne, the problem is you can go balls to the wall, just like you can in Dark Souls 2, as you have 20 blood vials, as well as already having this regen system, which I think is just too much healing. When you're going through some of the areas of the game, you don't ever need to stop to go back to the Hunter's Dream to get your flasks back or anything, and you can just keep going, progressing throughout the game constantly once you're good without ever needing to rest because you have just so much healing potential. Anyway, there's going to be more Bloodborne in a bit, but we're moving to Demon Souls for the first time in the series with the second flaw that's been sent in by Delirious Hunter. They say, Fundamental flaw with Demon Souls. I love both versions a lot, like 9 out of 10 or something like that, but man, the upgrade system really sucks. Especially for like moon and dragon weapons, you have to farm those bear bugs. It's not so fun. Yep, the upgrade system is something that I think FromSoftware definitely struggled to find a balance with in their first few attempts, and it's been streamlined more as time has gone on. Demon Souls probably has the most complex and obtuse weapon upgrade system out there, with every single weapon type requiring a specific upgrade material that can usually only be found in certain places or by killing certain enemies, which can get very frustrating, as some enemies have very low drop rates of certain materials as well, which means some weapon upgrade paths, like mentioned by Delirious Hunter, you just don't want to go down because the upgrade path is so boring with so many different types of upgrade materials that you need, and it's really tedious. For Dragonstone shards, you need to farm the bear bugs in 2-2, which take absolutely ages to kill, and they're a huge nuisance. And then for pure Moonlight stones, you need to farm crystal lizards in 3-3, which is also really annoying as mentioned, but it isn't even just those ones. Getting pure Mercury stone can be a pain, farming Sucker stone from the slugs can be annoying, and this is generally why my builds in Demon Souls are generally kept quite simple. This system was made slightly better in the original Dark Souls by allowing most weapons to be upgraded to +5 with just regular Titanite shards, and then after that you select which path you go down, and the resources you need are easy to acquire for the most part. However, there are still some that can be more frustrating, but as a whole the system has been improved in Dark Souls 1 and then continues to be improved as the series progressed, with the occasional change here and there in some entries. Now, for this third flaw then, it's been sent in by George Ling, with a similar flaw that was also sent in by Uncle Bourbon. We're talking about a general issue with FromSoftware games as a whole here, and George says, "So, I know you said to stick to Irks with Dark Souls 1 and 2, but I have to mention my all-time favourite FromSoft thing to complain about. It exists in every single game, but Dark Souls 3 and Elden Ring are the ones I've had the biggest issue with, and this is input buffering. Firstly, I'd like to clarify, I've always loved the fact that the game locks you into decisions by not offering many, if any, opportunities to cancel animations. The problem arises, however, when I press dodge right after attacking, realize it was a bad idea, but then oops, too late, you locked yourself into doing the roll after the attack completes, even if you pressed roll about a second ago. I've done some testing in Elden Ring as I found it to be the most egregious with this. With Ashes of War, like Bloody Sash, you can be hard locked into another action via input buffer as far as a full 1 to 1.5 seconds before the end of the previous action. I'm quite split with this one, to be honest, because of the reasons that you state, and I think there should really be a balance. The first example here is assuming you're attacking and then choose to dodge, but then suddenly realize that actually dodging is a bad idea and you want to go back on that decision. Now, part of me is thinking, well, you shouldn't have pressed the button to dodge so early, because you know that the game will lock you into that decision, but I do also agree that as the series has progressed, it seems that this has gotten worse. I myself have had massive issues with this in Elden Ring, especially like you mentioned when you're using Ashes of War, because those attacks tend to be a bit longer, which tends to mean there's a longer period for an action to potentially be queued up before it is then executed. However, Dark Souls 2 does the opposite of this. I was frequently frustrated during my recent playthrough of Dark Souls 2 when I'd be mashing the button to heal loads of times whilst my character was in the middle of attacking an enemy, hoping the game would therefore make my character heal as soon as the attack animation had finished, and then it just didn't, which I found really frustrating. So I think there needs to be a balance struck here. I feel like a solution could be to maybe not have input buffering for any action except potentially healing, because that would immediately alleviate my main concern, or just to make it so inputs can only be queued up maybe 500 milliseconds or less maybe before a certain action has been completed, therefore meaning you're less likely to run into the issue that you're mentioning here. Anyway, for the final flaw, we're returning to Bloodborne, which was sent in by Panjam, and they say, "To me, Bloodborne is my all-time favourite game, but I think they could have done the lanterns better. Maybe if it was more like Dark Souls 3, then it'd be better, but it's still my favourite game. Now then, Panjam, I have to say, I'm not sure exactly what specific aspect of lanterns you're saying is an issue here. However, I'm going to assume it's the fact that lanterns only give you the option to return to the Hunter's Dream, because that's something I immediately noticed when I played Bloodborne. Lanterns work just like Archstones in Demon's Souls. Their only function is to teleport you to and from the Hunter's Dream, just like how the Archstones only teleport you to and from the Nexus in Demon's Souls. This is just frustrating and annoying, and it's similar to Blood Vials in that it's a system that regressed. Dark Souls 1 did this system objectively better, and then for some reason Miyazaki did not stick to some of the improvements he made and instead regressed to some of the frustrations that we saw in Demon's Souls. I feel like you should be given the option to level up, organize your inventory and warp from every single lantern you go to, just like it's a bonfire. Especially with Bloodborne's really long, ridiculous load times at launch, having to constantly go to and from the Hunter's Dream is an unnecessary frustration that simply slows down the pace of the game and detracts from the overall experience. Anyway, that concludes the second episode of Fundamental Flaws. Again, make sure to type any flaws down below in the comments if you would like to be featured on the next episode. Like I said earlier, I'm trying to stick to Demon's Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2, and Bloodborne, but I will still consider things relating to Dark Souls 3, Sekiro, or Elden Ring if they do make for a good enough talking point. Also, as well, you could potentially support me by becoming a member if you want to and get exclusive benefits, like shouts out in the videos and potentially play with me, and all sorts of cool stuff. But you don't have to. Anyway, thank you for watching. Make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. Maybe you can share this video with anyone you think might enjoy it if you feel it was good enough. Thank you again for watching. This is SoulReborn signing out. Have a good one.